Hello, and welcome to our lesson on zero and negative exponents and their properties. So today's lesson is going to look mainly at two different properties. The first being the zero exponent property, the second being the negative exponent property. So for the zero exponent property, as you can see here, the zero exponent property simply states any value, so any base number to the zero power, so with zero as an exponent, always equals 1. So any number to the zero power is always 1. The negative exponent property states any base number to a negative power or a negative exponent is rewritten as 1 over that number to the positive exponent. So in other words, we move it to the bottom of a fraction and we get rid of the negative by the exponent. It always goes below the number 1. So example 1 is just making sense of these two different properties. So if we look at A, we have 2 to the negative second power. So in that case, I'm going to look at my negative exponent property. It is a base number to a negative power. So I'm going to move it to the bottom of a fraction and put the number 1 on top of my fraction as the numerator. So the 2 moves to the bottom. The power, that's the negative 2, goes with it, but becomes a positive, and it goes below the number 1. So our new fraction is 1 over 2 squared, which can simplify to 1 over 4, because 2 squared is 4. In part B, we have 2 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is always 1. In C, we have 5 to the negative x. So in that case, the 5 and the negative x move to the bottom. The x becomes positive, and we put a 1 on top. And then for D, if we have a fraction to a negative power. So if we have a fraction to a negative power, the easiest thing we can do is flip that fraction. So if we have 1/3 to a negative 1, we're going to flip that, which would become 3 over 1, and it would be still to the first power. 3 to the first power is still 3. So in example 2, they want us to rewrite only using positive exponents. So typically this is the most common type of problem where you'll be asked to apply our rule here, the negative exponent property, to rewrite so we only have positive exponents. So in this case, our first problem is 5 times, in parentheses, 2 to the negative x. So the 5 itself just stays 5. The 2 to the negative x gets rewritten as 1 over 2 to the x. Then 5 times 1 over 2 to the x. 5 times the 1 on top would be 10. Or not 10, sorry, 5. 5 times 1, 5. So we have 5 over 2x. In B, we have 2 times x to the negative 2, y to the negative 3. Now the 2 is not in parentheses with the x, so they can be separated. So we separate the 2. The x to the negative 2 becomes 1 over x squared. The y to the negative 3 becomes 1 over y cubed. So then when I combine and rewrite this, the only thing on top would be 2 times 1, which is 2. And the bottom, x squared times y cubed, so x squared y cubed. In C, the 5 and the a are in parentheses, so both are going to the negative 2 power. So I can split them and put them both below 1. So I have 1 over 5 squared times 1 over a squared. 5 squared on bottom is 25, so that would give us 1 over 25 a squared. And then in D we already have a 1 on top, and our d to the negative 3n is on bottom. So in this case, what I am technically doing is I would be moving this piece right here back to the top. Because it's on bottom and it's to a negative power, we are still following the negative exponent property, but because we're already starting on bottom, it would move back to the top. So that would become d to the 3n over 1, which is just d to the 3n. And then our other 3 simplify answers. So now if we get rid of variables and put numbers into the mix, how do we apply our rules here? Now this is also going to mix in our rules from our last lesson. So we'll be using our other 3 properties about the exponents and the laws of exponents. So in this case, we have 3 to the negative 2 times 3 squared. If I have the same number to different powers being multiplied, just like we looked at in our last lesson, we can add the powers. Negative 2 plus a positive 2 is 0. 3 to the 0 power is 1. In B, we have a power to a power, so I need to multiply my powers. So a negative 3 times a negative 2 is a positive 6. 2 to the 6th power is 64. And then in C, we have 3 to the negative 4th, which is the same thing as 1 over 3 to the 4th. Now this is where you could use a calculator, and we would get approximately 0.012345678 if we round it. 0.012345678. So the key to today's practice and what you really want to be careful about is problems like this middle section, rewriting using positive exponents. So just like with the last lesson for the practice problems, I will put in an additional video or 2 resource to help you as well. And I encourage you to reach out during office hours if you need extra help.